Welcome back to my channel. My name's Sarah, and if you're new here on this channel, I talk all about faith, family, and culture, specifically related to Arab families and culture. And today I wanted to talk about my experiences and the differences that I've noticed between culture and living in Jordan and the culture and life in the United States. Now, granted, I am American. I've spent much more time living in America than I did in Jordan. But even in the relatively short time that I lived in Jordan, I noticed some pretty significant differences. And so I just wanted to share those. And this is not an exhaustive list, but just wanted to share a few of the ones that I had noticed. The first major difference that I've noticed is that, in general, Jordan seems to be a much more family-oriented, friendly place as a whole. Not to say that Americans are unfriendly and that they don't care about family, but it's just at a different level in Jordan. Even though I was new and I was an outsider, I just felt like I was very welcomed by the people that I met. People who were strangers were just very accommodating, very willing to help me if I needed it. Taxi drivers, strangers on the street. There was a sense of community amongst neighbors and just people all over Amman that isn't really as common in American cities. Like, I'm new to Texas and I feel like I haven't really met that many people unless I've specifically gone out of my way to try and meet new people, whereas in Jordan you were bumping into new people and being invited over for coffee or for a meal much more regularly than you tend to be as a newcomer in the United States. The second major difference that I've noticed is that, well, it starts with a similarity. So the cost of things in Jordan seems to be pretty comparable to the cost of things in the United States in terms of rent and food and buying cars. All of those costs seem to be pretty similar between Jordan and the United States, but the major difference is that the salaries and the opportunity for jobs in Jordan seems to be much lower. There's much higher rates of unemployment, and the average salary in Jordan, I believe, don't quote me on this, but just from what I've heard, is around 400 JD a month, which, if you translate that to American dollars, is like $700 a month, which makes having a good standard of living in Jordan quite a bit harder, I feel like, because you have much less money to spend to buy food and clothes and pay your rent. So it's just a lot harder to have a good standard of living when you have so much less money to work with than you do in the United States. I'm not sure why there's that discrepancy, like why the costs of everything is similar to the US but the salary is so much lower. Maybe someone in my audience would know the answer to that, but I just found that very strange. I would have expected that the cost of things would be lower in comparison because of the salary. It would make more sense to me if, okay, the salary is lower, so therefore food and rent and everything would be lower in comparison as well, but it's not. Another difference is one that seems pretty obvious, but is kind of a curveball if you're used to living in one location or the other, and that is the size of the country. Jordan is the size of one of the states in the United States. I'm not sure exactly which state it would be comparable to, but you can get from one end of Jordan to the other in probably between 5 to 7 hours, depending on what roads you're on and how fast you're driving. Whereas in the United States, to get from one end of the United States to the other takes probably around a week, driving pretty consistently. And this was really hard for my husband to wrap his head around when we first moved here, because my parents live in Western New York. So they live on the far western side of the state, and New York City is on the far eastern side of New York State. But when we went to visit my family when we first moved back to the US, my husband was like, oh, we can just go over and visit New York City, which you can't, because, I mean, you could drive to it, but it would take 6 hours to get from where my parents live all the way over to New York City, even though it's within the same state. So in his mind, like, oh, it's in the same state, like, it's close by, but it's really not, and that's kind of a strange idea for people who've lived in a smaller geographical country. And just in general, when I'm outside the US or even when I'm in other parts of the United States, when I tell people that I grew up in New York State, they automatically assume that it's the city, or they assume that I could get to New York City really quickly. So just the mentality of the United States being so spread out, and even just within states being so large, can be really hard for people who aren't familiar with that to really grasp that concept. Something else that I've noticed, having lived in both locations now, in America and in Jordan, is that Jordan has a lot of wonderful food, but it has like a handful of really main ingredients that it uses over and over again in unique ways. So in general, it seems like Jordanian food often has rice or potato or bread and chicken or lamb, and those are used over and over again. But there's kind of a similarness across different Jordanian dishes. The food's all delicious, but the types of food are very distinctive to being Middle Eastern and utilize the same ingredients frequently. Whereas in the United States, I think because the United States is formed from lots of different people groups from all over the world, just the variety of food that is available in the United States is super broad. So you've got Italian food, you've got Asian food, you've got Middle Eastern food, you've got Mexican food. You just have all of these different flavors, and it just seems like the variety of food that's available to you is much larger, and what the general population eats is very diverse. You could eat a different type of food every day for a year and not repeat. Whereas in Jordan, if you are cooking only Jordanian foods, I feel like the options are going to run out quicker. And I don't say that as a negative, it's just a different way of approaching food, a different way of cooking. And I think it may also connect to the fact that Jordan is not an agriculturally based country, and so the food ingredients that are available there are also more limited due to geography and just the resources, the food resources that are available there. So if you've spent time in America and Jordan, I'd love to know what your experiences have been, what you've noticed. And if you're thinking about Jordan and want information about the country, the culture, places to visit, please feel free to reach out to me. I would be happy to share any information that I can. If you've enjoyed watching this video, please take a screenshot and share it on Instagram, tagging me at Sarah_Pullen1. I love knowing when you watch these videos, and if you tag me, I will repost every single one. Again, thanks for watching, and until next time.